Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first 14th Ward Democratic Committee meeting with Common Pleas candidates for Court of Common Pleas. We have a second meeting that is scheduled with the rest of the candidates that's going to be on February 13th. Look for a message from me this weekend with a link to join that meeting next week and the list of candidates who will be speaking that evening. This evening, we're going to be welcoming participants from many other committees around the county. A number of people have asked to join the meeting. This year, there are 8 openings on the Court of Common Pleas. This evening, all participants will be muted and your cameras turned off. We recommend, I don't need to do that. We're going to be spotlighting, so you don't have to do anything to get the candidates to come up in a large view. It may take a second when each candidate starts to speak for the split screen to go away and see the candidate. Okay. Candidates are going to have 3 minutes to speak, and then they're going to have 4 minutes to answer your questions. And again, you have to put your questions in the chat. Their completed questionnaires for all the candidates is at the link that's posted at the top of the chat. So if you see your chat button down at the bottom, you can click there. We hope people have had a chance to look at those ahead of time. Post your questions for each candidate in the chat. We have a tight schedule tonight, so please post your questions quickly to avoid a time lag between the time that their presentation ends and when we begin to ask questions to candidates. Leanne, who's here on the screen with me, can you wave, Leanne? Leanne is the Pittsburgh Democratic Committee chair, and she's going to be watching the chat, and Leanne will ask questions to each candidate. We suggest that you take some notes for yourself about each candidate to help you decide which 8 candidates across both of these 2 evening meetings you want to vote for in the Allegheny County Democratic Committee endorsement meeting. And that meeting is going to be March 9th at the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers Union Hall. It's on South 9th Street in the South Side. We take the selection of judicial candidates very seriously. And this year, with looming threats to vulnerable members of our community, deciding who sits in judgment of others is more important than ever. This is our opportunity to learn more about each candidate, their experience that has prepared them to sit in judgment of others, and their views that will shape their decisions. I'm going to turn this over to Leanne now. Thank you, and you can unspotlight me.
We all want to be unspotlighted at some point in life, Liz. Hello, if I haven't met you before, I am the chair of the Pittsburgh City Democrats. Happy to be a moderator tonight. We're going to bring up our first candidate, Michele Santicola.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I know this process is difficult and long for us, but equally so for you all. So we appreciate this opportunity. I started my career as a deputy attorney general where I served 10 years, both in the civil and criminal division of the attorney general's office. I handled cases throughout 22 counties in Western Pennsylvania, including trials in many different courtrooms in many different counties. I also did grand jury cases, appeals to the Commonwealth, and Superior Court. That experience prepared me well for my next step in private practice, where I practiced with my husband and several other lawyers. We did criminal defense work, and I did some trusts and estates. I left there and went to become a hearing examiner for the Liquor Control Board. I did that for 4 years. And during that time, I sat as a fact finder and made recommendations to the board, took evidence, wrote lengthy opinions, analyzing the facts of each case. Most of them were licensing issues like nuisance bars. You may have seen recently in our area, the Panther Pit that was shut down. Those are the kind of cases I heard all throughout the Commonwealth. Worrying about safety of patrons, focusing on underage drinking issues, and other licensing issues I actually wrote the opinion that allowed Sheetz to sell alcohol in Pennsylvania. So that may be good or bad, depending on how you feel. But 182 pages later, it was upheld all the way up. So now you can buy alcohol in Sheetz. Then I served on the Board of Supervisors in Moon Township for a few years. And during that time, I helped manage a $16 million budget, negotiate contracts, and I learned a lot about municipal law. So I was a prosecutor, a defense attorney, did administrative law, learned municipal law, and really dug in as a member of the Board of Supervisors. And then most recently, I was elected and have been serving for the past 5 years as a magisterial district judge. So I'm the only candidate who's been a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and a judge. During that time, I rule on many of the same issues that a common pleas judge will. It's a really good training ground for the next level. In civil cases, the only difference is the $12,000 threshold at the magisterial level. In criminal cases, determining probable cause. In summary cases, beyond a reasonable doubt. Issuing search warrants, arrest warrants. I hear homicide cases, everything from homicides all the way down to your basic traffic ticket. I was nominated and appointed to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court Rules Committee by the Chief Justice 4 years ago. I've served on that committee ever since. On that committee, we actually write and rewrite the rules of procedure, rules of criminal procedure for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's a really wonderful committee made up of attorneys and judges from across the state.
And the orchestra is playing you off the stage right now.
All right. And I'm highly recommended by the Bar Association. Thank you.
Great, great. Actually, that was one of the questions that came through to the chat for everybody in the audience. Please take time now. Michele will have 4 minutes to answer any of the questions that you want to ask. Are you recommended by the Bar Association? Highly recommended.
Yes.
How many, perhaps you said this already, but how many years have you been a lawyer?
Almost 30.
Almost 30. Okay. Thanks for making that clear. And of course, your whole speech is really answering this question, but there's a general question about that gives you another, I guess, couple of minutes to explain how your legal experience has prepared you for the bench.
Okay. I think not only my legal experience, but my life experience has well prepared me to be elected to the Court of Common Pleas. In November after the election, I sat on my couch for 2 days and cried. And then I said, you know what? As Michelle Obama said, do something. We got to do something. So I dried my tears and I said, this is something I can do. We see in Washington right now, the only guardrails on what's going on are the courts. And it's so important. And it's really important that we put qualified people in these positions. I believe 30 years of legal experience, including, like I said, being a prosecutor and a defense attorney. When I became a defense attorney, I looked at life a lot differently because you're standing with someone who's been accused of a crime and you're looking at that whole person, not just the charges, not just the person in front of you, but their background that got them to that place. And I think that experience being on both sides has been really important. Also, my experience in the civil side of things is important as well. I've not just practiced one kind of law, I've practiced many kinds of law. I think all those experiences together, as well as life experience. My husband and I got custody of a young man about 1.5 years ago who was falling through the cracks in our community. No parents, elderly grandmother was taking care of him. And we found out that he was going to be placed. And so we had met him once, but we heard great things and we brought him in to live with us. And he's now my son. And I see what he faces as a minority. And that has also inspired me in addition to what's going on in the larger world. It's really frustrating. And I feel like we need good people in good places for the right reasons. And I feel like I'm one of those people.
Michele, thank you for that answer. There's another question. Do you ultimately see yourself in civil, family, or the civil, family, or criminal division? Understanding that the president judge really makes all these decisions.
Right, right. And honestly, I would be honored to be in any of those positions, and I think I would be prepared. I've obviously concentrated a lot on the criminal side of things, but I've also done. I've practiced civil law, and I think I'd be ready and prepared to go to any of the divisions.
Okay, great. We got about 40 more seconds here. Why don't you take it? You got 40 seconds. We're gonna have to play you off again, but any
Okay.
last thoughts you want to share?
All right. Well, I really, like I said, I appreciate having this opportunity to speak to you. I believe, like I said, my experience has well prepared me for this. I've served my community in a number of ways as a magisterial district judge, as a volunteer at our food bank, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, and service is kind of in my blood. And I would love to and be honored to serve on the Court of Common Pleas. I think my experience has well prepared me. 30 years of legal experience. And we need experienced people in positions of power, unlike what's going on to the south.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank
And
you.
now I'm happy to introduce our next candidate, Alyssa Cowan. Thanks for being with us, Alyssa.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for hosting this. And thank you for all the work that your group does on behalf of Democratic candidates and all of the election cycles. So my name is Alyssa Cowan. I'm one of the candidates for Court of Common Pleas. I have some exciting news to report from this week. I was recently appointed to the bench by Governor Shapiro, voted in by the Senate this week. I was sponsored by Senator Lindsey Williams and Senator Jay Costa. So I am now appointed to the Court of Common Pleas as a judge, and I have been assigned to the Family Division. So I am speaking to you tonight to be elected to a full 10-year term after I serve out this vacancy. My journey to the law was a little bit different than others. I started my career as a professional social worker in Philadelphia. I have my master's in social work. I was working with court-involved children and families and going to court with them and really seeing this disconnect between the training of the judges and the attorneys and lacking those foundational skills in child development, psychology, family systems. And I thought, well, we can really do a better job by our court-involved children and families. So I went to law school. I obtained a public interest scholarship at Temple. After I graduated law school, I started my litigation career in DC's Office of the Attorney General, litigating child abuse and neglect cases, and also worked on some federal foster care legislation. I grew up in Monroeville. My husband's from Wexford. After we had our second child, we came back to Pittsburgh with a toddler and infant in tow, wanting to raise our kids in this area. And I started at Kids Voice, representing children in the foster care system. I've also been a legal trainer with the statewide Adoption and Permanency Network, where I developed and delivered trainings on a variety of topics across the state to judges, hearing officers, probation officers, and case workers. Most recently, I've been at the county law department, where I've managed our 16 attorneys assigned to the CYFDHS unit, overseeing all of our cases from start to finish, including appellate work. So I'd like to bring my interdisciplinary approach and all of my local, state, national, and international experience to the bench. I've presented and trained twice at the International Society of Family Law World Conferences, once in Australia and once in the Netherlands. I'm really excited to serve now as a judge in the Family Division, and I hope to earn your votes this spring.
That's great. Thanks, Alyssa. According to the timer, you got 30 more seconds.
Oh, that's great. I'm so excited. I cut short a little bit of my job descriptions. I'll reverse it back to Kids Voice for a minute. One thing that I was extremely proud of my work at Kids Voice was helping to develop the medical and education unit, where we advocated for foster care kids, not only in the courtroom, but also in their school behavioral health and medical settings. So I was able to advocate for them in their disciplinary hearings, their special education service, due process hearings, as well as be an advocate for them in their behavioral health setting.
Great, great. Thank you so much. The next section, you'll have 4 minutes to answer questions that are in the chat. The timer, if for all the candidates listening, is it's the top right of the screen above where the chat is, if you have that
I see that.
That's the best place to see it. This question actually segues great from your last point in your job description. Where do you stand on providing education on child and domestic abuse matters to psychoanalysts, psychologists, evaluators, guardians ad litem, which apparently is a legal term that I don't understand, tasked with reporting to the family courts on the best interest of the child? So condensed, it's where do you stand on providing education on child and domestic abuse to the folks responsible for informing the courts?
Yes, absolutely. So guardian ad litems are attorneys who represent children in our cases, and they represent their best interests and their legal interests. And in terms of providing education, a big passion of mine is really demystifying the court system, the process, and providing that education to any professionals in our community, professionals, lay people who are involved in the court system, so that they can understand who the parties are, who the attorneys are, who all of the different cast of characters are in the court system. I'm adjunct faculty at the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work, so that's a huge passion of mine because so many social workers go on to work with court-involved families or in the court system itself. As probation officers, et cetera. And I teach children and families at risk, child and family advocacy, and lobbying for nonprofit organizations. And for me, it is all about just increasing those competencies and those that comfort level with the court system, whether you're working in it or if you're a witness on a case, and having that full understanding. So I'm passionate about education about the law to everybody, and especially those individuals who are providing that expert witness testimony.
Great, thank you. We're going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions. One is, what changes would you like to see in the Court of Common Pleas?
I'd like to see us create and develop more robust self-representation services, those pro se services, because so many individuals come into the courthouse either representing themselves pro se or looking for more affordable legal services. So making sure that all of those resources are available to individuals who are coming into the courthouse. When I worked in Washington, D.C., we also had mediation available for all of our child abuse and neglect cases. And that was a wonderful alternative dispute resolution that we were able to engage in with families and get them connected with services more quickly when we successfully mediated many of our cases. So I would also like to see an expansion of mediation services in our family court system or throughout the Court of Common Pleas in general.
We have just under a minute left, and here's a question. How do you feel about fees and fines for people 18 years old and younger?
Right. So it's, our juvenile justice system is focused on rehabilitation. So we really need to make sure that anything that we're imposing on our youth moving through the juvenile justice system is focused on that goal of rehabilitation. Occasionally, fees and fines can be a part of that, but it needs to be really targeted to individualized. And if it really makes sense with the facts of a case, and to really figure out how that's going to contribute to that rehabilitation focus and whether it's actually going to increase the chance of success when they exit the court system.
Great, great. Thanks so much, Alyssa. And we will move on to our next candidate, Matt Rudzki. Matt, you have 3 minutes. And it looks like you're on your phone. That there is a timer on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but I can give you a 30-second warning when you're almost up. So
Yes.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am Matt Rudzki, one of the many candidates for the Court of Common Pleas. I am currently the district judge in the Fox Chapel area. I've been in that role for a little over 3 years now. And prior to serving as the district judge for the Fox Chapel area, I was the mayor in Sharpsburg for 4 years. And prior to that, I was on council for 7. I was also an elected committee person. So I want to thank everyone tonight for all that you do and for having us here. I am running on a platform of restorative, fair, and accessible justice. And restorative justice for me is looking at the folks who are at risk of falling through the cracks in our justice system. On any given Wednesday, which is my criminal court day, I see a lot of individuals who suffer from mental health needs or substance use disorder. And while I was the mayor of Sharpsburg, I'd advocated for an embedded social worker in our police department. Council didn't hire that person while I was the mayor, but they did after I took the bench. And she is always welcome in my courtroom. I also have a social worker from Passages to Recovery who comes to my courtroom. And the benefit there is it has really increased our success rates with when I order someone to do a mental health eval or a drug and alcohol eval, that social worker can follow up with them, get the appropriate releases, and make sure they're doing what they should be doing.
It looks like his
We
connection dropped.
I think we lost Matt. I wonder if we should move forward and let him come back.
He just popped into the waiting room.
Okay, all right. Let's.
I have to get him back to co-host land. Just a sec. Is he just plain Matt? I think he might have had to change his name.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Matt Rudzki, are you here?
Yes, I can't start my, okay, there we go. I apologize for that. Not sure what happened there.
I'm going to reset your timer because, you know, the internet
Okay, thank
is
you.
bad. Okay.
So
Take
I have
two,
found
Matt.
with,
Take two.
yes, thank you, thank you. I have found with those social workers, when we connect people to the resources that they deserve, when they come back in 60 or 90 days, they've completed everything we've asked them. So that allows that person to maintain their dignity. It allows them to get back on their feet or stay on their feet. When I talk about fair justice, I always address the disparities that we have in our criminal justice system, and we know they are many. And typically it starts at the arraignment process. And as MDJs, we arraign probably 99.5% of the individuals that are entering the criminal justice system. And I always tell people I'm one of those judges who does not use cash bond except in limited circumstances. If someone has a detainer or hold, I'll put a small bond on them so that they can start accruing time on the new charges. But as a former mayor, as the son of a police officer, my dad was a police officer for 41 years in Sharpsburg with the last 12 as chief, and as a husband and a father of 3 small children, public safety is important to me. So if I determine that no conditions can guarantee the safety of the public, I will deny that individual's bond. And there's many reasons why, but the number one reason is no one should sit in jail because they're too poor. And conversely, if someone can't afford to post bond, that doesn't necessarily make our communities any safer. The last prong is accessibility. I'm happy to report that when I took the bench, I became the second judge in the county to introduce a night court option out of my district court. It is the first Thursday of the month, which happens to be tonight. And I do that for all of my juvenile and school cases. I did teach for a year at a Fulbright. I was in Austria at 2 different high schools. So I know the importance of kids being in the classroom. And it always seemed counterintuitive that we took them out of the classroom to talk about truancy. So 3:30, we do high school cases, 4:30 elementary school cases, and middle school cases. And following that, we reserve time for traffic cases and for landlord tenant cases so that working folks and families don't have to take off a day of work to come into court. So the why for me, I think I've done meaningful and effective work for my communities. I want to scale it up to the rest of Allegheny County. I've handled over 15,000 cases in 3 years. I've got the experience and the temperament to take the bench of the Court of Common Pleas and deliver to the rest of the residents of Allegheny County. And I know I lost some time earlier, but we can move on to questions so I don't take away from anybody else.
That's great. Thanks for being considerate. I will reset the timer for your 4 minutes. And I have a question written directly to you. From everything I've heard, you're doing great work as a magistrate. We need good magistrates. Why move to the Court of Common Pleas?
Thank you. I saw that was from Marie. My career as an attorney, as a public servant has always been about impact. I like to think that the residents thought enough of me in Sharpsburg when I was a member of council, when I ran for mayor, that they were gracious enough that I'd earned their vote to become the mayor. Same thing while I was the mayor, they were gracious enough and I earned their vote to become their district judge. And like I said, the work that we've done has been so meaningful. And the first Thursday of the month for me, my juvenile night, it's one of the most rewarding nights of the month for me, but it's also the most exhausting. But I care about the outcomes for those kids. And like I said, I want to deliver that to all of Allegheny County.
Great. Thank you for that answer. When did you earn your law degree?
So in 2013, I graduated from the Duquesne Klein School of Law. I did have a gap year. I graduated from W&J in 2008. I had that year in Austria on my Fulbright, and then I went to the evening division at the Duquesne Klein School of Law, and I worked during the day with an attorney, Paul Giuffre, for 3 years, who, after I graduated and passed the bar in 2013, ended up practicing law with him for 8 years until I took the bench. And I had made a promise during my magistrate race that I would be a full-time district judge and I would give up my law practice so that I could focus all of my efforts on the communities.
Thank you. You may have already said this, but I want to make sure we get to it. Are you recommended by the Bar Association?
Yes, I received a recommended rating from the Bar Association.
Terrific. And do you ultimately see yourself in the civil, family, or criminal division? Even though that decision isn't ultimately yours.
Right. I think I could hit the ground running in any division. I get asked this question a lot. A lot of folks think I want to end up in the criminal division because of my beliefs in criminal justice reform. But while I was in practice, I did school law, municipal law. I did right to know law, sunshine law, zoning, planning, code, election law, tax assessment appeal law. So it's my jive, it's my jam. I know it's not glamorous work, but if I ended up in the civil division, I think I would be an asset there. And as to family law, as I had mentioned, I had my night court tonight for my juvenile cases, typically handle 40 to 50 juvenile cases a month, which is a big part of that division. There's an adult section and a juvenile section. And in addition to that, as MDJs, we do emergency PFAs. Generally, we're doing those when we're assigned to Pittsburgh and Municipal Court, but we have about a dozen or so of those a year that walk into my district court. So I've got the skills to hit the ground running there as well.
Okay, we've got just under a minute left. What changes would you like to see in the Court of Common Pleas?
Sure. So I think one of the big cultural changes that I would make is simply starting on time. One of the most frustrating things for me as a lawyer was sitting in a courtroom for waiting on a judge for half an hour or an hour. I think the longest I waited for a judge to take the bench was 90 minutes. That's unfortunate because it's not really trauma-informed justice. You might have victims or witnesses in the same room as a defendant. And when they're in that tight space together, and for example, in our district courts, there isn't a lot of place to move around. And for lawyers, they have other clients that they got to get to as well. I would tell a quick story about working traffic court and city court. I've only been invited twice. First time I went, I started on time, started dismissing cases within 15 minutes because nobody was prepared. And it took me 3 years to get invited back.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt, for your time. And thanks for persevering through the tech issues. And we're going to move on to our next candidate.
Thank you all.
And that is Jackie Obara. A reminder to everyone watching, please throw your questions in the chat, even if you threw them in at the beginning. If you want to have me ask a question again, please make sure you put it in the chat. Jackie, you have 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. I want to quickly thank Chair Healy and yourself for hosting tonight. It's greatly appreciated. I think I met many of you at the Barbara Daly Danko Forum last weekend. But I've been a licensed attorney since 2004. I've been practicing primarily in the area of family law for the last 20 years. When I graduated, since graduation, I've been a litigator, a law clerk, a hearing officer, and a law professor. When I first started, I practiced in a very small family law firm, and I hit the ground running. Essentially, the supervising attorney gave us a caseload, and we represented clients in all manner of family law cases, divorce, custody support on the trial court level and appellate court level, including protection from abuse and dependency matters also. After practicing for a bit, I became Judge Tom Flaherty's law clerk. I was his law clerk for almost 19 years until November when I resigned to run for judge. When he was first elected to the bench, he served in family division. We were there for 4 years, and then we moved to criminal division, where he's been for the past, I think, 15 or 16 years. In all the time that he was on the bench, I rendered advice to him that he relied upon in virtually all of his rulings. While being his law clerk, I was appointed by the court, family division judges to serve as a discovery master, which is essentially controlling document production in complex divorce litigation. For the last 6 years, though, I've been appointed by the family division judges as a divorce hearing officer. In that capacity, I've presided over 1,000 cases involving complex divorce, support, enforcement of marriage settlement agreement matters, all pertaining to family law. In addition to that, I've been a frequent presenter at the Matrimonial Inns of Court. I recently, a couple weeks ago, presented at the Pennsylvania Bar Association Family Law Section meeting on my topic was use of financial experts in complex divorce litigation. One of the things I've noticed, though, as a hearing officer, is that a lot of the families coming through the family division are in a state of crisis. Two things that are most important to people are financial security and their family. And that's something that we deal with on a daily basis in adult family court. And the people presiding over those matters need to be well educated in the area of family law. They need to have a good temperament and they need to understand compassion. But in addition, you need to hit my 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Finish your you take the next start of your
Okay.
questions for like 10 seconds to finish
Okay.
that thought.
Thanks. But I noticed that you need good compassion and you need the ability to listen. And that's something that I've developed over the last 6 years and I've learned from Judge Flaherty.
Great. Thanks so much, Jackie. Let me start with a question that we seem to be asking everyone. Are you recommended by the Bar Association?
Yeah, I have received a rating of highly recommended from the Bar Association.
Okay. And what do you consider the elements of a good temperament in a judge?
Well, listening, compassion, understanding, and really making people feel like they're heard. Particularly in family division, when you're dealing with the most emotional aspects of a person's life, they need to feel like you understand not just the law, but who they are as a person, because they come to you in a unique situation.
Thank you. Another question. What made you decide to go from studying chemistry to having a desire to pursue a law degree and ultimately a law career?
Well, they say life takes many different paths, and mine certainly started that way. When I was in high school, I was an avid equestrian and loved horseback riding and animals, and I wanted to be a veterinarian. So that was my intention when I went to college. But I ultimately decided that wasn't the right career path, but I loved chemistry. So I continued my degree. I was enrolled at Purdue University to get my doctorate in analytical chemistry. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to move from Pittsburgh to Purdue, I changed my mind and my mom said, well, go get a job. So I got a job at Bayer in the industrial hygiene lab, working with these 4 guys who were like my dad's age, and they called themselves my 4 dads. And they said, Jackie, you really don't want to work here forever. What do you want to do? Maybe you should go and be a patent attorney. Which I don't know if you guys are aware, but to be a patent attorney, you have to have a science, engineering, or technical background to sit for the patent bar. So I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. And after my first year of law school, I realized I didn't like patent law when I was on law review and had to write an article about it. But I also did an internship with Judge Manning in criminal division and realized that my real passion was the law as it applied to people and they're in the human condition. And so ultimately, while I didn't end up practicing in criminal law, I went to family law, which touches the lives of a lot of people in a similar but very different way.
Great, that's a great story. We have a little over a minute left. What can you tell us about how your current career has shaped you to be the kind of person who should be on the bench?
Well, sitting and listening. So the cases that I hear are not generally easy, and we hear them in long time increments, right? So some of my trials are 5, 6, 7 days long, and you really get to know someone and their situation. Our conciliations that I handle are in 3-hour increments, and I really get to know the people coming through the court system. And so that job and performing that function as the divorce hearing officer, in addition to being a law clerk and seeing the process and the procedures of the court system from the judicial perspective, has really impressed upon me the monumental responsibility and the magnitude of the job of a judge. It really goes beyond being a finder of fact. It is outcome determinative. And a lot of the reports and recommendations that I issue are final orders and the final disposition of property
finish
for the
that thought.
parties. And oftentimes they're upheld on appeal, or they're not even appealed at all. So
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you very much for having me, Jackie O. Take care.
And we're going to move on to our next candidate, Hilary Wheatley.
Hilary, could you turn your camera on, please?
Hilary, if you're here, you have to help us find you, I think.
Awesome. Very good.
Hi, everybody. I'm here. I'm just having trouble getting my camera turned on. Bear with me while I do that. I always have the hardest time in my car. I can go ahead with my introduction.
Let's have you go ahead with your introduction. You have 3 minutes, and then you'll have 4 minutes for questions. I think cameras are nice, but in the interest of making sure we're covering everybody and giving everybody their allotted time, why don't we forge ahead?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Hilary Wheatley. I am the magisterial district judge for the district that includes Mount Lebanon and Dormont. And I'm sitting in my car and I got my camera on. I am highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association, which is an honor I am really proud of. I've been serving as the magisterial district judge since January of 22 after being overwhelmingly elected by my district voters. As a magisterial district judge, I have presided over more than 1,000 arraignments for adult defendants charged with felonies and misdemeanors, and over thousands of hearings involving civil, landlord-tenant, traffic, truancy, code enforcement, and criminal cases. So I have 3 years of experience doing the work of a judge already. I was admitted to the Pennsylvania Bar in 2002 and the Ohio Bar in 2005. After graduating from law school in 2002, I spent a year clerking for a judge in York County, Pennsylvania, that helped me launch my career as a civil litigator. I spent the next 4 years working for a high volume consumer rights litigation firm doing lemon law, breach of warranty, unfair debt collection, dealer fraud cases all over the Commonwealth, including in district courts like my own, all the way up to arguing before the Third Circuit in Philadelphia. Since 2007, I have focused my litigation career on real estate matters with Papernick and Gefsky, doing a variety of real estate related litigation and transactional work. Since taking the bench in 2007, I have shrunk my practice significantly to only advising a small handful of homeowners associations and planned communities, doing work that I can do in my non-judicial hours because my priority has been being a district judge. In my free time, which is very little these days, I'm the single mom of a 13-year-old boy, and I help coach his soccer team and try to find time to read and travel when I can. And I'm willing to give up the extra minute for extra questions.
That's great. That's great. So one of the questions that has come through is, if you're elected and assigned to family division, how will you get up to speed in that area of the law?
Sure. So part of the magisterial district judge role is to review emergency petitions for protection from abuse orders. So I have some experience in that aspect of the family division courts. In addition, I've also been a plaintiff myself in a divorce and child support case. And the other way you get up to speed is you learn and teach yourself, just like I learned and taught myself how to be a magisterial district judge, hearing cases that I had no previous experience litigating as a lawyer. You rely on your colleagues, you take the training that is offered to you, and you learn as you go, because that's how all judges, you know, they don't train us how to do this job. They give us the files, and you got to figure it out as you go. And the way to do that is to ask the right questions and be a good listener.
Thanks. I know that you said this at the beginning, but can you repeat your Bar Association recommendation, please?
Highly recommended.
Okay. And what another question we have is, what do you think are the major weaknesses of the justice system?
Legal representation is exorbitantly expensive, and it creates barriers to justice for way too many Americans.
Let's see. What do you consider the elements of good temperament in a judge?
A good judge listens with an open mind, allows people the opportunity to be heard, makes sure that people understand their rights and the process, and understands that people in their courtroom are more than just the facts on the piece of paper or more than the worst decision they've ever made. In the last 3 years on the bench, I have come to learn that intimately. And, you know, I deal with people every day who are there to answer for maybe the worst decision they've ever made. And the best judges, and the kind I strive to be every day, is somebody willing to offer a lifeline in that crisis, and the grace and compassion to allow people to access the services and resources that are available to them so that they can, on their own, find their way forward. And, you know, good judges understand that and don't look down upon people in their worst moments.
This question is a great follow-up to that. Tell us your thoughts about cash bail.
Cash bail is one tool in an arraigning judge's toolbox that is nationally used disproportionately against marginalized communities. And in my view, rarely makes the community safer. Just like Judge Rudzki mentioned earlier, he and I have a whole lot of the same views on cash bail. And I use it very infrequently and most often in nominal amounts when a defendant can't be released anyway because of pending bench warrants in other counties or detainers. And that allows them to accrue time while they sit in jail waiting for those detainers or bench warrants to be released. But if I believe someone is not safe to be released, setting a high monetary amount doesn't make us safer. If someone is not safe to be released into the community, the right choice is to deny their bond.
Okay. Thank you for that. We all assume that you don't have to be a parent to be a qualified judge, but you are a parent. And so how has your experience as a parent prepared you for hearing cases as a judge?
That's a great question, and I love talking about this. My son is my favorite person on.
You've got a minute. You got 1 minute.
I will talk quick. My son is my favorite person on the planet, and I say a lot that I want to be the kind of judge, and I want the court system to treat everybody the way I would want my favorite person on the planet to be treated, with kindness, with compassion, with an understanding that bad choices don't equal bad people, and everybody needs a helping hand through tough times in their lives. And so, you know, I look at the adults and the kids standing across from me and think of them as somebody's son and somebody's daughter and somebody's mom, and think of them not as bad people or the bad things they've done, but just people who have found themselves in circumstances and they need a little help.
That's terrific. I'm going to give you the last 20 seconds to say whatever you want. Okay.
I just want to thank all of you for participating in this, offering us the opportunity to do these joint Zooms, because this is a lot of work, and you all put a lot of work in for your communities, and I'm grateful for the work you all do. So thank you very much for tonight.
Thanks so much, Hilary. We are going to move forward now to our next candidate, Elizabeth Hughes.
Good evening.
Hi, Elizabeth. You have 3 minutes. The timer is at the top right of the screen if you haven't noticed it yet, but the floor is yours.
Great. Good evening, and thank you to the 14th Ward Committee for having me this evening. My name is Elizabeth Hughes, and I'm asking for your support as candidate for the judge of Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a Pittsburgh native. I grew up in Penn Hills. I currently live in Churchill, and my background is I'm currently an in-house counsel for a large healthcare provider here in locally in the region, and the bulk of my experience is in family law, as in my private practice before becoming in-house counsel, and prior to that, I served as a county solicitor for the county of Allegheny. I also have experience prior to going to law school in the direct service provider realm as a child and adolescent case manager before I went to law school. So I have experience working with youth and was did mental health. My caseload dealt with children who were the children of parents who also had significant mental health issues. So, I decided to run for judge because simply I care, and I care deeply about the children and families of this county. I feel that one of the things we need most of all is collaboration and efficiency, because if we have all the stakeholders who can come together to the table, we can get a lot done. And sometimes it's just knowing where those tools are and those resources are, and having the conversations between the folks who can most serve the people who come before the courts, including the judge, who can get everybody together at the table. If you know where these resources are, which I do because I have been in all of these different realms, I can, sit down with everybody and get everybody at the table, and you can solve these problems in a very practical way. I can bring experience to the bench. I have 20 years of legal experience, and I feel that the collaboration leads to more fairness, problem solving. When you can get access to the courts, you have more fairness. I also have a lot of leadership experience. I was the president of the Allegheny County Bar Association and led that organization through the pandemic. It's an organization of 5,500 members, and led them with transparency to our membership, collaboration, and bringing just being decisive when necessary, but listening to all of the perspectives that were brought. So I'm committed to fairness, efficiency, and the well-being of our community, and I humbly ask for your support and trust in my ability to serve with integrity and dedication. Thank you. I'm happy to take your questions.
Great, thanks. So a reminder to folks to drop your questions in the chat. We have one right away here. What made you switch from family law to healthcare law?
That's a good question. Actually, it was a really pretty smooth transition because of the kind of work I do. I kind of specialize right now in pediatrics, and also do a lot of work related to guardianships, women's health. So as a family law attorney, my background, particularly with custody and family law, is very helpful in the work that I do now, because I am what they call, I do a lot of pediatric work. So I'm counsel to the large pediatric facility, the large pediatric hospital. It's the only pediatric hospital for 300 miles. And so I also am what they call pediatric service line attorney. So for the entire system. So anything that has to do with minors and their health care, any questions that come up when you have minors who are also in the care of CYF, so dependent minors, minors who are in the care of third parties, anything that comes up having to do with that, those questions come to me. So all of the experience that I had working in family law is very useful in my job now. So it was really kind of a unique transition, and folks who are in that corporate realm really don't have that experience.
Can you share with us your Bar Association rating?
I don't yet have a rating. I will be going before the Judiciary Committee on March 4th. So I do not yet have a rating, so hopefully it will be a good one. I have served on the Judiciary Committee, so I'm well aware of the importance of the Judiciary Committee and the ratings that they give.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
what do you see as the main weaknesses in the legal system? And what do you think the role of a judge is in helping to address those things?
One of the weaknesses I see is just the
You've got just a minute and a half.
some of the access and just the fact that we don't really do a good job of educating the litigants on how to navigate the system. I think that judges can do a much better job of helping and educating how to use the system and what people to what to expect when they come before the court. I think people have no idea what to expect when they come to court, and they come to court expecting, either a quick fix or something to happen right away, and they don't know what to expect and they get frustrated. So I think that there's a much better role that judges can have in educating people as to what they need to expect and how to navigate that system, and what they should be looking to really expect from the door when they come. And we just do not do a good job of that. And people are very frustrated when they come and they don't know how to navigate it. It's complex and complicated. And
That's great. I want to follow up just so we don't, because we're going to run out of time.
Sure.
There's a question here specifically about parents, trying to get parents to come together to agree with what's best about their kids. You got 30 seconds.
Sure.
Sorry.
I think that, I have a lot of experience working with parents and being very collaborative. And I've been very successful in working when I was a family law attorney with opposing counsel and working through very difficult cases, and very collaborative and getting people to be able to settle. And as a judge, I think I could use my skills that I have now working with all the stakeholders I work with now, to bring everybody to the table and have folks talk and be able to solve those issues and make court more efficient. And that increases access to justice.
We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
And now we're going to bring up our next candidate, and that is Amy Mathieu.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi. Amy, you have 3 minutes. The timer is at the top right of the screen. It's not there yet, but it will be. The floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Amy Mathieu, and I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I am originally from Wheeling, West Virginia. It's where I grew up, and despite my entire family being ravenous West Virginia fans, I decided to go against the grain and come to Pitt for undergrad. I stayed here for law school, and I've lived here ever since. I currently live in the North Side with my wife and our 3 dogs, who you may hear in the background at some point tonight, but we'll try and keep them quiet. I actually married my wife the Saturday before the election in November. So it was a really, really joyful day, followed by a really difficult day. And while we were still on our honeymoon, I started having conversations with her about what I can do and what we can do to help people moving forward in Allegheny County to protect people. We already know what this administration is doing and has already done with these executive orders, and that's attack the civil rights of our citizens. I am a civil attorney. I'm a civil rights attorney. And so I've done that my entire career. I represent people who have been discriminated against at work based on their age, sex, religion, gender identity, sexuality, or age or disability. The other half of my practice, I represent survivors of sexual abuse in their civil claims. So that oftentimes meaning suing the Catholic Church or schools that have allowed or covered up the sexual abuse of children. A lot of times these cases are really hard to litigate, both because I have clients who are being re-traumatized by the process, and because we're going up against a huge institution with really deep pockets and endless resources to try and keep my clients quiet. And not only am I going up against 5 or 6 attorneys on the other side often, I'm also going up against the biases of the judge and the jury in the courtroom. Because let's face it, I don't look like other attorneys in Allegheny County. I certainly don't look like any judges in Allegheny County. But that's one of the reasons I decided to run. Growing up in Wheeling, I didn't know a single openly queer adult. it would have changed my life to know a judge who looked like me, identified like me, and fought to protect people like me. And that's what I want to provide the youth of Allegheny County. Our bench should reflect the diverse community here. And right now it doesn't. So I've dedicated my entire career to protecting people's civil rights, protecting people's civil liberties. And I want to be able to do that from the bench now and make decisions that really matter moving forward in our country. So I welcome any questions that you guys have. I'm so happy to be here and be able to have this opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Great, thanks, Amy. One of the questions we've been asking everybody is about their bar association rating. So I'm assuming it's not a secret to you that you got a not recommended rating. Can you you don't have a lot of time, but give us a little bit, give us a thought or two about why that is.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I do think that I still have to overcome biases in rooms like that too. And I think that is compounded by the fact that I have been practicing 9 years. And I think that it is my belief that they have a standard that they don't recommend people unless they've been practicing 10 years. I find the number to be arbitrary as an attorney who's been practicing 9 years and being the only candidate that practices civil law. So I do think I have a wealth of experience that is lacking on our court right now.
Hey, thank you so much for your transparency. We've been asking some folks, of course, the president judge makes decisions about where you land. You practice civil law. If you were to land in another division, what kind of work would you do to get yourself caught up to speed?
Sure. Yeah, and I have done a few things in other courtrooms. Just as a young attorney, you kind of go where you're needed when you're at firms. I've done PFAs in family law, and I've also done things. I do know that my clock needs a battery. I've also done things as necessary at other firms. But I think the most important thing that a judge can do is validate people's experience in that courtroom and learn from what you're hearing from the bench. In civil law, every single thing is different, right? Criminal law and family law, you get a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same arguments over and over again. And it's easy to kind of learn those types of law compared to civil law, where everything is different every single day. Every case is a new legal matter. I just argued in front of the Commonwealth Court yesterday on a matter of first impression that will change the law in Pennsylvania. So I take the time to read everything ahead of time. I take the time to do my research, and it would be no different as a judge from the bench.
Thanks so much. We have a question about who, and you may have said this already, who do you work for or with doing civil, as you practice civil law?
Yeah, I currently work at HKM Employment Attorneys. And so like I said, I worked at a firm before that specialized in the sexual abuse cases. I brought all of those with me. All of my clients chose to keep me as their attorney when I switched firms, which I thought was a great honor. And so half of my practice is still representing those claims. The other half is representing employees in claims against their employer based on discrimination. So that's at HKM Employment Attorneys.
What are your thoughts about the pros and cons of Pennsylvania electing judges?
I took a whole seminar about this, so I don't want to take up your whole night with how nerdy I could be on this subject, but
you only have a minute and 30 seconds to be nerdy.
I'll get it in. No, I think that the more power that the citizens of the state and the county have, the better. I don't think that appointments best serve the community. I think judges being elected by their peers and by people who are going to be affected by their decisions every day is the best way to choose justices in our system.
Great, thanks. We have a question. It's a big question and you don't have a lot of time, but it's a question about helping parents who basically face the barriers that the court puts in front of them. You've got to take off work to come and figure out what's best for your kid. What are your thoughts about the way the courts could be better for serving families who are experiencing trouble?
Yeah, I think that's part of a judge's job, is to make the court more accessible to every participant in it. I want the court to be accessible to everyone. I want everyone to have the same fair shot in a courtroom. I don't want anyone's decision to be based on the color of their skin, who they love, a disability. or whether they have to take off work to get there. Now, I don't know if the staff of Allegheny County Court are going to stay open for night court, but that would be my preference, is to have weekends or nights where people could come in and not have to take off work.
Thanks so much for your time, Amy. We're going to move on and bring up our next candidate, and that is Dan Miller.
Thank you.
Yes, hello. Hello, 14th Ward. How are y'all doing?
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for being here. You've got 3 minutes to give us an introduction there. I don't know if you can see the time on your phone, but there will be a timer appearing in a minute. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. It's good to see, well, good to be with you all tonight. I'm actually sitting against a wall here in McCandless, just enjoying the night, but I appreciate you guys making the time. Again, I'm Dan Miller. I'm the state representative in the 42nd District in Mount Lebanon area. I've been there for 11 years. I just got done serving as the House Majority Whip. And before that, I spent 11 years as a public defender and a county solicitor, where I made thousands of court appearances in both delinquency and dependency, primary, mental health court, probation, parole, those types of things as well. I also am involved with Rooter Law, where we are a special education law firm, where we fight to be sure kids have the education they need with school districts, which has been interesting to see where that's been taking us of recent time. Look, obviously, I'm running for a court here today, and I'm hoping to get your vote, one of your 8 votes. To me, with it, it's always been about public service, and I've appreciated every opportunity along the way. I was the first one in my family born in this country. Both my parents obviously were immigrants. It meant something for them to be here and for us to have the chance to be here. That kind of led me to enlist when I was 19, led me to spend 14 years as a firefighter, to a term in AmeriCorps, and then obviously as elected commissioner, and then to the State House, where I primarily serve on the Judiciary Committee and Labor Committee. Most of the work I do is always disability and mental health. That's the priority issue for me, of where I spent my time, both my career, my volunteer time, my advocacy work has always been in that arena. I always felt it was something that was not focused on. It was a big issue that needed a lot of attention. And to be honest with you, I kind of underestimated how much effort and attention it would take to sort of make difference in any arena. I've enjoyed being a rep. It's been a great honor. I very much appreciate the opportunity to do it. And so sometimes people ask me, they say, well, why are you looking to do something else? And as much as I've enjoyed writing bills, writing law, debating constitutionality, and sort of making the partisan fights that, sometimes have to be made, I kind of loved being in a courtroom, and I loved having the chance to make a difference on the individual, the case by case, person by person, sometimes family by family level, that being a public defender or county solicitor allowed me to do. I felt that I was making a difference in somebody's life. That's what it's always been about for me in relation to law. It's something that I really was honored to again be the first to go to college, and obviously to law school. And so that's what I hope to do, and that's what law is always meant to be. So I hope I can get one of your votes, and I appreciate your time and listening to me talk about myself, and I'd love to hear more about the questions that matter to you.
Thanks, Dan. A reminder to folks to drop your questions in the chat, even if you've dropped them in before. Can you tell us, Dan, you've already said some of it, but tell us something about how your experience, even as a state rep, has prepared you or grown your readiness to be on the bench?
Yeah, look, I've to be honest, I feel incredibly blessed by it in relation to law. I spent 11 years, as I said, sort of in court 3 or 4 days a week, nonstop, in a variety of roles, and I very much have benefited from the in courtroom experience of that. That being said, in the State House, I've had the opportunity to sort of delve into law from a different angle. When I say that I write bills, the disability, mental health, criminal justice, and juvenile justice bills that I offer, I wrote those bills, right? Overwhelmingly, I write my own bills. I write my own amendments, and I, make my own arguments. And I do that having taken a wealth of knowledge that extended beyond just what I was getting from a book or from a courtroom experience. It kind of helped me grow as a person and helped me understand sort of the intent of law, what goes into its making, and what really are the goals of it, and how it can shape and impact people's lives. To me, my time as a legislator has made me a better attorney. I enjoy that, and I believe it will help me on the bench.
Great. We've got about 2.5 minutes, so we'll do a little bit of rapid fire here. First of all, what's your Bar Association rating?
We'll find out March 4th.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
All right. And how many years did you practice law full time before moving to the State House?
So 11 years.
Okay. And how do you feel about cash bail?
Look, I'm against we have a problem in our state. I love how you want this to be a short answer. We have a problem in the state in relation to proportionality, right? So whomever is poor gets treated differently. That's an issue for me. We are lacking progressivity in so many ways. So it bothers me very much that somebody would be able to walk out because they could pay a bail and for a greater crime than somebody who is in there for a lesser offense but can't afford to get out. And then what is most frustrating as a public defender was how many times my clients ended up, even sometimes really going against my advice, to waive their constitutional rights to due process, to preliminary hearings, just for a chance. They were doing it for a bail reduction. So look, I don't believe that our system is applied as fairly as it should be. So I just don't want to see any scenario where somebody is in jail for a small amount. So we could debate that as to how it would go, but that's my general direction. I don't like people having to waive rights for a couple $100 that even a middle class person would be able to walk out the door on.
We've got about 45 seconds. In what ways would you make your courtroom accessible for people with disabilities?
Oh, I love it. Look, as I said, disabilities and mental health is my priority. So everything that we try to do comes from that lens. Designing our courtroom, would have to come from that point of view as well. A lot of what I try to do first is to bring in my friends. Who will come in with different types of disabilities and share their experiences, walking through and talking to how we set up our disability and mental health summit. Some of you may know. So we start from that informed perspective from the beginning, and then make sure that not only is the physical environment one that can do it, but the staffing and everything else that follows is the way it should be for that inviting as well. So thank you for the
Thanks
question.
so much, Dan. We appreciate your time. Thanks for answering the questions. And we're going to move forward to our next candidate, and that is Jaime Hickton.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself to you, aside from what I indicated in my questionnaire. The work that you guys do is so critical, and we just wouldn't be where we are without all of your efforts. So I wanted to acknowledge you. I'm a former Whitehall committee member myself, and I've worked on numerous campaigns, everything from knocking doors to chasing ballots to phone banking. So thank you for all of your efforts. Really, I think, the most important calculation to me when you're making this incredibly critical decision about who you put in these tremendous positions of power is their why. My entire life has been lived fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. I've been in this field for almost 20 years. I've been a practicing attorney for 11. And in those 20 years in this field, I've worn every single hat within it. And the reason I bring that up is because I was previously a child abuse prosecutor where I, prosecuted people who committed some of the most heinous crimes against our arguably most vulnerable population, which is innocent children. And now I own my own law firm and I'm a criminal defense attorney. So I don't defend people in child abuse cases, but I have an entirely different approach and perspective now that I'm on the other side of that fence. And I understand a lot of the issues that the criminal defendants have to face from a very different perspective because I now represent them almost every single day. I put myself through undergraduate school only because I was able to get a soccer scholarship because I come from very humble beginnings. When I was very young, I lived in a trailer park with my family. And, fortunately, my parents parents were able to work themselves out of that circumstance, partially because they were able to get good union jobs, go union. But, you know, I put myself through undergrad and then I became a juvenile probation officer for 7 years. And the reason that I bring that up is because my lived experience is very different from your typical judicial candidate. And it's informed me in a way that I think helps me see cases through a very different lens. Most of the judges that I appear before are very good people. They have great hearts, but they haven't necessarily worked in the trenches with the population that they serve, and they haven't come from that background themselves. So because of the way that I grew up and because of the type of work that I've done my entire career, I see things differently. I've experienced things in a much different way. And I think when we're talking about who we want to elect to these positions, we have to elect people who fundamentally understand the issues of the population that they're going to serve. I represent people now in child welfare cases, so parents and children, I represent them. And in Washington County, I'm actually the attorney for child welfare. So even in that field, I've represented people on both sides of the fence. I devote a significant amount of my time to serving the community. I'm a board member of Planned Parenthood of Western PA, and I'm also a board member of PAR, which is Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. Governor Wolf appointed me for a 3-year period of time to the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquencies, Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Committee. And all 3 of my children are adopted from the child welfare system. I myself was a foster parent. So when I say that I've literally worn every single hat in the courtroom and I've been on every single side of every issue, I genuinely mean that. And that's what my entire career has been, serving people and fighting for them, those who can't fight for themselves. So with that, I would open it up to any questions that you guys have. And I'm really excited to hopefully earn your support as one of the 8 candidates.
Thanks so much, Jamie. We'll wait till the Oscar music ends. We'll take 4 minutes now to answer some questions. Could you give an example of the different perspective you bring as a result of having all the different roles and experiences that you've had? What might you see that judges from different backgrounds don't see?
I have a wonderful example of this for you. So, whenever I was a juvenile probation officer, I didn't necessarily understand the plethora of circumstances and issues that arise from individuals with special needs. When I was growing up, no one in my immediate family had a different presentation other than neurotypical. But when I was a juvenile probation officer, I started to experience that population and educate and inform myself because I was actually working with them side by side. And so when I became a juvenile prosecutor before I was a child abuse prosecutor, I actually had a kid who was charged with multiple felonies. And essentially, you know, what had happened was this child was autistic, he had Asperger's, but his father was from a country in Africa and didn't understand his presentation. So his father would expect him to act in a certain way. And when he didn't, his father would, you know, initiate a verbal disagreement, which would then escalate into a physical altercation. And this kid was much bigger than his dad. So his dad got the short end of the stick when it got physical. The police ultimately filed multiple felony charges against him. And when I was the prosecutor on the case, my supervisor told me that I was not allowed to work the case out. But I used my prosecutorial discretion based on the experience that I had had in my 7 years as a juvenile probation officer. And I essentially said, look, this kid actually had some scholarship opportunities at Ivy League schools because he didn't have problems in the community. He didn't have problems at school. His only problems were in the home. So I essentially, you know, did not follow what I was told to do by my boss because as attorneys, we have independent ethical obligations. And I made the decision as an independent prosecutor that I was going to offer him a diversionary program within the court so that, you know, we would not have the collateral consequence of negatively affecting the rest of his life. We were able to put some services into the home and help the father understand his son and understand his presentation. And as a result of that, he was able to successfully complete the diversionary program. He did not have a criminal record, and he went on to accept a scholarship at an Ivy League school. If I would not have had the experience of actually working with that population, I would not necessarily have had the fundamental understanding of how I should approach that case to achieve justice, not just to achieve a conviction or not just to achieve, you know, a win in a particular category. So that's one way that I can explain that.
Thanks. We've got a little under a minute and a half left. Could you tell us about your bar rating?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very, very pleased. As I indicated, I've been in the field for 20 years, but I've only been a practicing attorney for 11. And I'm very happy that they gave me a recommended status from the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Great. What can you, there's a question about the relationship between homelessness and criminal justice. And can you speak to the balance of understanding the circumstances that sometimes create crime? What do you see as a judge's responsibility there?
I think judges have a tremendous amount of responsibility to not just read what's on the paper in front of them. I think that judges should always, in every single circumstance, try to understand the underlying problems which have led to the behavior. And homelessness, as you guys I'm sure all know, is just something that is mostly about individuals' mental health, substance abuse, or about, quite frankly, them not having the appropriate family supports to kind of help them through those difficult times in their lives. And I think judges are obligated to consider all of that to try to divert cases that can be diverted away from formal court supervision and to receive the necessary services that are accessible in the community.
Great. We really 2 seconds left. Perfect timing. Thank you so much, Jaime. Have a good evening, and we're gonna move on and bring up Quita Bridges, our next candidate.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Great, thank you. All right, is it Sim Quita or Quita?
Well, it's really Sim Quita, but everybody calls me Quita, so I'm going with Quita.
All right, Quita, you have 3 minutes, and I believe you'll be able to see a timer on the screen once you get started.
Okay.
And then we'll have questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Quita Bridges, and I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas with almost 30 years of trial court experience under my belt. I have tried all different types of cases, homicide cases, child abuse cases, both physical and sexual abuse cases, and I've also tried intimate partner violence cases. And I like to say that I've been in the room where it happens. And that's a line from Hamilton, but in the room where it happens, a lot of important decisions are made and a lot of difficult decisions are made. And in the room where it happens, I've seen families' lives turned upside down. In the room where it happens, I've talked to children who have to tell me about the most degrading details of something that happened to them, and I have to be their voice. In the room where it happens, I've dealt with witnesses who were afraid to testify because they didn't want to be considered a snitch. And so I have to figure out how I'm going to handle that case. In the room where it happens, I have to also deal and talk with the opposing counsel so we can figure out what's the most equitable solution in a case. And sometimes they give me information that I didn't originally have in my case in chief. And so I have to figure out how I'm going to utilize that information. So a lot of things happen in the room. And I would like for you all to know that every time I've been in the room where it happens, I've conducted myself with integrity. And integrity for me is doing the right thing when no one knows you've even done it. And it is the compass that guides my everyday ethical decision. I am running for the Court of Common Pleas because I have the trial court experience. I believe that I have the disposition for this position. Disposition is very important because of, the court sets the tone for how individuals view the legal system. I think that the courtroom should reflect the highest standards of integrity, empathy, and justice. And I want to bring all of those values to the bench. I want you all to know that I was recently appointed by the governor to serve on the Court of Common Pleas. I will be in the criminal division. And although I know that that is an honor, I know that I have to earn your support, and that's what I intend to do. I also received a highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association. Thank you very much, and I welcome any of your questions.
Great, you've got 30 more seconds, but we'll just move ahead. Actually, it's congratulations on your appointment. We've had a question come up occasionally about the difference in being an appointed judge versus an elected judge. Pennsylvania elects judges. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, certainly you value your appointment, but you tell us more.
Well, I do value the appointment. It's going to help the court system with the cases they have backlog because they have so many open slots, and so they need judges and they need people to be on the courts. So I'm honored to be able to help them with the backlog of cases. And of course, you know, you still have to work to hold the position. So you have to do what it takes to earn the support of the people in the county to elect you to the position so that you continue to be the support mechanism for the court system. So.
Thank you. Here's a question. What do you think are the weaknesses in the court system, and what would you do about them from the bench?
Having worked in the Attorney General's office, I've had the opportunity to prosecute cases in 23 counties in Western Pennsylvania. And one thing that I see that the courts in the other counties in Western Pennsylvania do is they don't allow the lawyers to have so much control of the calendar. And I think the court's calendar in Allegheny County sometimes get backed up because the attorneys pick the dates for the next time they're going to have the case. And so I think that sometimes creates a backlog, whereas in some of these other counties, the court pretty much controls the calendar and tells you when you're going to have to be in court. Now, that may be a hard thing to change in Allegheny County because we're pretty kind of used to creating a calendar based on the lawyer's time. But I think that that's something that if we could incorporate, you know, changing that, it would not give us the backlog that we have, you know, because a lot of times lawyers and district attorneys and defense attorneys alike will continue cases, and it just goes on and on and on, and it creates this, you know, as I keep saying, the backlog. And so I think that if we could control the calendar better, that would make the court system work a little bit better.
Great, thanks for that answer. I've got a two-pronged question. We're only going to have about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
So let's, tell us about your proudest moment, if you can, in abbreviated form, and your most trying moment in your career.
The most proud moment. I think every time that I've gotten justice for a child has been the most proud moment that I've had. Those kinds of cases are very difficult cases because usually they are the sexual assaults have happened over a course of time and the children don't talk about it. And so you don't have a lot of evidence or, you know, to go on. So whenever I can get justice for a child, that is the most proudest moment that I have. What was the other question real quick?
Your most trying moment.
Well, let's see, the most trying moment. One time I had a case where the judge was just not in a good mood. And for 3 days, a 3-day homicide trial, I felt like attacked me, the witnesses, the jury, and it was a really bad experience. And justice was not found in that particular case. That was probably the most difficult time that I've had in court. But even at that, I maintained my professionalism. And I remember one of the advocates said to me, "I don't know how you held yourself together through that." And I just, it's what you have to do because it says a lot about who I am if I can maintain, you know, my professionalism. So that was most trying.
Thank you so much, Quita, for answering the questions. Thanks for your time. We're going to move forward to bring on our next candidate.
All right.
And that is Sarra Terry.
Sarah, could you please turn on your camera?
Okay, I'm sorry. I am trying to turn on the camera, but I'm not sure what is happening.
That's okay, Sarah. If you want to keep trying that, that's fine. But in the interest of moving along, we're gonna start you. You can start with your introduction even off camera. You have 3 minutes, which you should see on the screen now.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm very sorry I can't get the camera to work. I'm on the phone in the car. But my name is Sarra Terry. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. And I want to talk tonight about something that's really important to me, and that is building a better court system. I grew up in Millville during the heart of the heroin epidemic, and I watched drugs just absolutely destroy my community and destroy people's lives. And addicts weren't just news stories for me, they were friends and they were family members. And these experiences really changed who I was as a person. And it also really opened my eyes to the correlation between unaddressed mental health issues and addiction related issues and ultimately criminality. And these experiences also led me to pursue a legal career. And I always like to tell the story about my first day of law school. I remember pulling my old Ford Taurus in amongst all the luxury cars and feeling like I didn't belong there just because of how I grew up and where I grew up. But what I realized was that parking garage was exactly where I was supposed to be, because it was the first step on my journey to being a voice for people in our court system that don't normally have one. So for the past 13 years, I have been a criminal defense attorney. For the past 12 years, I have been a judicial law clerk in the family division. In both those roles, I've come into contact with many, many people. And unfortunately, what I've found is so many of them are suffering from mental health issues and addiction related issues. And I feel as though our court system isn't working for them. And the one size fits all approach to treatment isn't working for them. And it's just so important for us to get the treatment options right, especially for our kids, because if they don't get the treatment they need, we're going to find them in the adult criminal system over and over again. And so I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas because I want to build a better court system. I want to create a more trauma-informed court, and I want to be able to offer people real options for treatment so they can achieve long-term and meaningful recovery. I think that if we can build a better court system to address these issues, that we can build better and safer communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarra. We'll have 4 minutes for you to answer questions. And I have a question right here. What does,
Sure.
Oh, wait, we'll let the orchestra play first. What does a special counsel at Dickey McCamey do?
So special counsel is just a different way to describe an attorney in the law firm. Because I'm also a judicial law clerk, I don't bill the same amount of hours as a regular attorney, like an associate or a shareholder would. So that just denotes a different, I guess it's a different variation of the type of attorney I am at Dickey McCamey.
Okay, great, thanks. Did you share your bar rating with us already? You may have said it, but I want to just reiterate it.
I did. I shared it in the answer. May I expound upon it?
Yeah, just tell us. Well, actually, there are more questions. Just tell us what it is.
Okay.
And then we'll move forward.
Okay, it's not recommended.
Oh, then I definitely want you to take you got like 30 seconds. You have a chance to tell us.
Okay, thank you. So the committee really focused on why my cases had not gone to jury trials more often. And so the reason for that is that I handle nonviolent misdemeanor criminal offenses that are not eligible for jury trials. And they also carry jail sentences, mandatory jail sentences, which with each DUI conviction, for example. So when I sit down and decide how we're going to move forward with a client, very rarely is it in their best interest to go to a jury trial, if so eligible. And I don't know, all the other factors, but I know that was 80% of the questions they asked about. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. I'm in court all the time, between 10 and 15 times a month. I just do not have jury trials regularly because of the type of cases I have.
Thanks for taking the time. to share that. Here's a question from the chat. I appreciate what you said about addiction and mental health. How would you address these issues as a judge? And just so you know, we're going to be just under 2 minutes when you start talking.
Okay, thank you. So my approach would be to increase the type of treatment options that we offer to people. Right now, the court still utilizes 12-step approach or 12-step type of treatment options. And that has a very, very low chance of working when we're talking about young people. So I would like to implement more options, whether that be like private therapy, group therapy, just look at different options so that people can really get help that they need and so that they can achieve meaningful recovery.
And a different question about your opinion on incorporating social work professionals in your courtroom. Is that something you are in favor of? Why or why not? Just under a minute left.
Absolutely, because the more people that we have in court that can connect litigants to services, the better that is. Because right now, the court, I think, needs as much help as it can get because we just don't have the ability to offer all the services that people need. And Pittsburgh has so many great community services. So I think a social worker would be a wonderful idea. And I wish I had thought of that.
Could you give us one example of a trauma-informed practice that would be implemented in your courtroom?
Sure. So when I talk about trauma-informed,
30 seconds.
Okay. When I'm talking about trauma-informed, I think the most important aspect of that is that we have kids evaluated almost immediately when they come into our court system, so we can identify their specific needs and the specific type of treatment that they would need. So often we have the kids that come through with childhood trauma, and I just think it's a really, really important that they get those services.
Great. We're out of time, but somebody wants to know if you're still driving that Ford. Can you say yes or no?
No, you know what? I actually have a Kia now. So yeah, I got rid of the
Okay.
Ford.
Thanks so much, Sarah. We are going to
Thank
move
you.
on to our next candidate, and that is Julie Capone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Julie Capone. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I am asking for your support. I was also a Democratic committee person in O'Hara Township. I recently resigned to run for judge, so I appreciate all the work you do. I have been for the last 23 years in public service. I have worked at the district attorney's office. The last 20 years, I have been specifically in the elder abuse unit. I got my passion for wanting to work with seniors at an early age. At the age of 15, was working at a nursing home. I was an aide to the nurses' aides, and I worked in the Alzheimer's unit. Doing that work was really meaningful to me. I saw a lot of hard things there, though. There were a lot of wonderful workers there, but I saw a lot of neglect and hard things that made me want to continue on with that work. So when I went to Pitt Law School, I did pro bono work, working at the elder clinic at Pitt. And in doing that work, we would go to senior citizens' homes for people that couldn't afford legal aid, and do wills, estates, landlord-tenant issues, any type of care they needed. So when I got to the district attorney's office, we didn't have anything geared towards senior citizens, and the first unit was created, and I was the first person put in that unit. And I'm proud to say I've been doing that for 20 years, and now I head the unit. I have taken a leave of absence from work to focus on running for judge because it is that important to me. I feel that I can do a lot of good. I have been in the courtroom pretty much every day for the last 23 years. I've done a lot of trials. I'm not doing trials every single day, but I'm in there in the trenches seeing what needs to be done. I have a lot of personal experience too. I was a victim of a crime in 2009. I was road raged by a man, and I was put through the court system. And I learned from that experience, I thought it was very traumatic, that people are thrown into the court system and they don't know what's going on. And we need people that have compassion, experience, are fair, and are willing to listen to everyone and understand that's their entire world. And I feel that I am that person that can do that. And I'm just asking for your 1 of 8 votes, please. Thank you so much. Oh, no, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I just
Oh,
took
okay.
up
No, I
20.
thought it was on my end.
No, I just took time away from you. Actually, maybe we can give you 20 seconds extra on the questions.
Okay.
Reminder to folks to add questions to the chat. Did you share with us your bar rating already?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you
I did.
remind us?
Sure. I was highly recommended.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. And you talked about the fact that we need your experience as a victim informs your thoughts about what the court needs. Could you say more about the temperament of a judge that you think is necessary?
Yes, I could. I have seen over 23 years, and believe me, there's wonderful judges, but people come to court and they don't understand what's going on. It's their entire world surrounding them. They're there, maybe someone they care about's accused of a crime. Maybe they're accused of a crime. They're a victim. They witnessed something terrible. They're going through a divorce, custody, whatever it is, and they are thrown into the system, and they're there all day long, missing work. And the court system has, that needs to be worked on. I can say that. 15 cases per courtroom a day. And people sit there all day in the hallways, and it's really scary and traumatic. And I mean, I was a part of it myself, and I've been working there 8 years. And I can tell you that I went to therapy actually over the whole process, and I knew the system. And I just think we need more compassion and understanding, and people to be heard. That once they are there, that they feel like they're heard, no matter what's going on that day, that the court needs to give them that feeling that they were heard and got a fair shake. And I can guarantee you that's what kind of judge I would be.
That's great. I think, can you offer us an example of an action you would take as a judge that begins to bring that compassion that you're talking about?
Yes, well, I've thought about this for a long time about one of the things that I've done with the work I do is I try to ask the courts ahead of time, can we put at least the senior citizens on call, it's called, so that they don't have to come out of where they feel very safe from home, come down to the courthouse and sit there all day, and it's traumatic. I feel we should be doing that for not just seniors, for so many people, that we have an on-call system for children, for anyone that's involved. That whole day of sitting there all day causes people more trauma, and I would do that as if I were lucky enough to be elected as a judge, have an on-call court system that we know these cases are definitely going, and if not, you can be on call.
Thank you. Thanks for that. In what ways will you make your court accessible for people with disabilities?
That's a very, that's close to home for me. My family, my father is hearing impaired. He was born that way. My sister and brother inherited it. They used TTY growing up. We couldn't go to the movie theater. Things weren't accessible. I feel that we don't have a lot that's still accessible for people with all different kinds of disabilities. Seeing seniors that needed wheelchairs, I think we need to pave the way a lot more for people with disabilities. And that would be one of my priorities as well, that we tried to work on. I know with the work we did at the courthouse. I know a lot of judges have been trying to do that. So I do want to give the credit where credit is due.
I appreciate your transparency about therapy, because there's a question about how officers of the court, lawyers, judges, can become more aware of their own vulnerabilities when it comes to approaching cases that they have to deal with. Do you have thoughts about that? Yeah.
Yes, I've always been open. I think,
and I'm going to ask the timer to give you like 15 more seconds because
Okay.
I really cut you off. So go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm not ashamed to say I go to therapy and have gone to therapy. And I don't think that we can all do these jobs day in and day out without seeking some type of help. And I think more people need to. We see a lot, and I think it's really important and healthy. It's just like going to any type of doctor for anything. And I really encourage everyone to do so.
Thanks for your time, Julie. Thanks for your transparency. We're going to move on now, and
Okay, thank you so much for joining.
yeah, have a good night. I want to invite Mike Sullivan forward.
There we are. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. All right. Good evening, 14th Ward and other friends chiming in here. My name is Mike Sullivan, and I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas as well. I live in Mount Lebanon these days. I grew up in the North Hills to, what I would call a working class family. My mom and dad worked hard to make ends meet for me and my special needs sister. Growing up with my sister gives me, I think, a different perspective on what people might go through in life than others, because she started having epileptic seizures when she was just 6 months old. So that caused her to have a lot of mental disabilities and physical disabilities. And so I watched my parents fight for her with the schools and doctors. But moreover, my parents taught me that just because somebody has a different skill set than you, looks different than you, acts different than you, you treat them like a human being with care and respect and dignity. And I've taken those lessons to my professional career. Currently, I'm a defense attorney, criminal defense. I also do a little bit of family law, mostly in the area of protection from abuse. And the reason why I do that is because most of my legal career was spent as a domestic violence prosecutor. I did that work for just about 20 years. And the last 8 years of my time with the DA's office was as the supervisor of the domestic violence unit. And that experience is really why I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. Too many times I would go into the courtroom with a victim and have that victim pour their heart out, only to have them come out into the hallway with me and tell me how they feel like they were not listened to by the judge, or there was no effort to understand, or in the worst case scenarios, they felt like they were a second-class case to the other courtrooms or the other cases in the courtroom that day. And really, violence against women cannot be a second-class case at the Court of Common Pleas. So I want to run to make sure that, not only those domestic violence victims are heard and understood and given the time that they need to tell their story, but also the criminal defense clients that I have. They feel some of the same ways as my domestic violence victims that I represented. They feel like they're a name and a number on a file and nothing more. And, what they've been through and what they need is not necessarily in the interest of the court all the time. So, I want to make sure I'm a judge that cares about the people who come into the room and give them the patience, understanding, compassion, and respect that they require, so that I hear their stories and make a good decision based on everything that I'm hearing. I've also done work to make the court system work better. I've worked inside the courtroom, obviously, lots of jury trials, lots of non-jury trials, but I was the chair of the domestic violence task force, and I worked with other judges and court administration and community members to try to find ways to make the court system work better. And now that I've been on the other side, I'm interested in finding other ways to make it work better, not just for domestic violence victims and abusers, but for everybody that comes into the court system, no matter what division we're in. So, and I happily will answer questions now.
Thanks so much, Mike. Here's a question. You've been a defense attorney and a prosecutor. What does each side get wrong or need to learn from the other side?
Well, I think the one thing that, especially in the last 10 to 15 years that has occurred is that you have the prosecutors and the defense attorneys sometimes dug into their foxholes, and they don't take a minute to take the sort of helicopter view of their own case to understand what the other side, why the other side is doing what they're doing, what their point is. And that's something that I tried to fight against as a prosecutor and now as a defense attorney. I make sure I ask the prosecutor all the right questions. But when I was a prosecutor, one of the compliments I always got was, "Hey, you're one of the guys that always listens to what I have to say. And then you tell me, okay, that's a good point, or no, and this is why that's the answer." So I think if there's a little bit more understanding and a little bit bigger picture view from everybody, it would work a little bit better between the sides. And I did see the question about my bar rating. I am recommended by the ACBA.
Great, great. There's two other questions here that are kind of big, but I'm going to ask you to sort of condense your answer. What are your views on the newly implemented cadence law? And you're gonna have to say a word or two about that for everybody in the room. And how do you plan to ensure that Allegheny County courts reflect the intention of the new law?
Well, cadence law is a new statute that allows family court judges to take criminal convictions, relevant criminal convictions, into consideration when they're making decisions on, custody support and the like. So, the one thing is that, if I am put into family court, like a lot of new judges are, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I will have a good understanding of the criminal justice system and the ins and outs and how things work. And, when I see a conviction, I can put it into perspective, maybe a little bit better than folks who've only practiced in family law or civil law. And I can, apply the proper weight of that conviction, to the case so that, we're not, just laying the hammer down on people because they have a conviction. It should be taken in the light of all the evidence that's presented, not just to put your thumb down on a person who has a conviction.
Okay, one more question here, and you have just under a minute. What are your thoughts about the filing PFAs when there may not be merit behind a claim? Do you believe in placing some boundaries around this issue? Do you have any thoughts?
I do. I mean, it's a difficult balancing act because you don't want to dissuade actual victims of violence and domestic violence from filing. So if you put limitations and barriers to access, then you may make a situation more dangerous for a person. So the court does have to tolerate some of the false or phony filings, but that's where training and experience come in. That was always something I handled, all the violations of protection from abuse orders for the DA's office. And, after 15 years of doing that, I felt like I had a pretty good radar for something that was, frankly, BS. so you learn to look for some of those things and ask the right questions to get to the heart of the matter.
Thank you for taking time to answer that question. And thank you for your time this evening. And we are going, if you've stayed from the beginning to the end, give yourself a pat on the back because we're in the home stretch. Our last candidate for the evening is coming up. Thanks, Mike. And let's bring forward Lauren Leiggi. I hope I said your name right.
You did. Yes, it is Lauren Leiggi. Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to give you 3 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for staying on so long for me. My name is Lauren Leiggi, and I'm also running for the Court of Common Pleas. I live here, me and my wife, in the 14th Ward. We've actually lived here for about 4 years now. We really love this community, so happy to talk to you guys tonight, you all. So about me, I'm a public defender. That means that I'm a criminal defense attorney for those who can't afford an attorney or they're incarcerated in a prison system here in the United States. My job basically is to make sure that the government does their job, and that my clients are heard in court, and that I make sure that we do what they need, and at the same time, the Constitution is upheld, and try to bring a balance to everything that's going on. And with my advocacy at the office, I was actually elected by my fellow peers to be the president of the USW in our new local union. So I actually represent PDs, DAs, medical examiners, court records, and alongside ACJ employees and Kane employees in the county with bargaining and grievance processes. And lastly, I also specialize in the area of crimmigration. It's a new field because of case law named Padilla. So it's a blending of criminal and immigration law. And I think that's really important to note during this election cycle. Whether you're a CMU student, a parent, a community member, if you're facing a criminal charge or if you're in the legal system, it's really my job to make sure with my team that we make sure our constitutional protections are afforded to everyone living in Pennsylvania and our counties. So now going on to the personal, I do have 35 years of a diverse lived experience. And from that experience, I've dedicated over a decade of my professional experience to public service work. And then when I say diverse, I mean, I grew up in a time period, unfortunately, where Mathieu shepherds, that's what I was introduced to being an LGBTQ, I'm an out and proud lesbian, was killed for who he loved. So instead of going right to college, I did odd jobs. Eventually, I went back to community college. And then I found grants and scholarships to actually transfer to the University of Pennsylvania. Then I went to Temple Law, and I went there because it was the #1 trial ed school in the nation. I actually did food stamps while I was there. I went to their food pantry to do this because when I was out in the world working, I realized how much is demanded of my community and of our communities collectively, if you're a woman or color or minority. And I wanted excellence for myself, and I wanted excellence for my community. And so I think that excellence is reflected in the work that I do. I've represented thousands of clients. I've done assisted in DUI cases, grand jury indictments, homicides. I've held the government to the highest burden, and I love what I do. So why do I want to be a judge now? It's because of all my experiences. I was calling committee members out in Wilkinsburg. A woman said she already knew me because her daughter saw me on social media, and she said, "Hey, I can be a judge too, or I can be a lawyer." And that was really touching to me. And that reflects in my legal work, where I'm meeting with a client in the jail, and I'm telling them, "Hey."
I have to wrap it up. The Oscar music played, and so
I'm sorry.
no worries. We're gonna
just get into your questions. Yeah.
yeah, we'll get to questions here. First of all, did you share your bar rating? Forgive me if I missed that.
No. I didn't do it yet. I am getting my interview on February 19th.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Great. How you talked about being 35.
Yes.
And so this question, I think, is in response to that. How would you respond to the suggestion as that it might be good to have a bit more life experience before running for judge? I'm just reading the question. I want to make that clear.
I appreciate that, Leanne. What I would say is I am very similar age to other people in the fields. And I do think public defenders, we have dog years of experience. It's our joke. I've probably handled over 4,000 clients. I've had over 30 non-jury trials. I've done a handful of jury trials. The fact that I've already done a grand jury indictment in my 4 years experience, that I'm trusted with that, I think it reflects in how rigorous I made sure my education was. I've had family members who were incarcerated, who have done secondhand adoption. So I think my life experience, in conjunction with the I went to an Ivy League. I made sure I went to the #1 trial ed school. I understand that I was behind the 8 ball. So I wanted to make sure that I put myself in a position where I do have jury trials experience. I have picked that and whatnot. So I appreciate the question. And I would always welcome to chat more offline about that as well.
Great. Thanks. We have a little under 2.5 minutes left. Can you explain the work that you do in immigration? You called it crimmigration, right?
Yes.
Give us a succinct, if it's possible, explanation of what that looks like.
Yeah. So crimmigration, it's through this law called Court Case Padilla v. Kentucky. If you are any type of citizen, non-citizen resident, you are entitled to representation of what can happen on your status if you're proceeding through the criminal proceedings. So what I do is I advise clients who have a not citizen status in the United States, no matter what it is, and we pretty much make sure our advice is not going to impede their pathway to citizenship. I've also practiced along the border, helping domestic violence victims seek asylum. I've sued the federal government for their treatment for individuals while they were incarcerated. And now I do know your rights trainings, and I also I guest lecture at Duquesne University, helping their immigration law class understand this. It's a new niche field of crimmigration. So sorry I can't be as succinct as I would probably want to be.
No, it's fine. Tell us what you think the temperament of a good judge is or needs to be.
I think it's someone who's patient and someone who's kind. I think it is an age-old saying for that reason. We need judges who understand maybe different neurodivergencies, different needs in the courtroom, different just accessibility issues, taking the time to understand language issues, ASL interpreters. I think all these things of just understanding that people don't know what the courtroom is. Most people I know in my everyday life don't know what the courtroom is. So I think patience, understanding, kindness goes a long way. I have 5 nephews that I babysit, so I think they trained me well on temperament. And I think a little bit goes a long way, taking maybe a little bit more time with one client or taking a little bit more time in chambers, and also making sure the courtrooms run effectively so everyone can feel heard and seen in the courtroom. I think that would be a good temperament to have.
That's great. I'm going to give you the last 10 seconds to say whatever you want.
Well, I really appreciate all your time. If anyone has more questions, I'm the only Lauren Leiggi in existence in the United States, so you can easily look me up. I really am hoping for your support in the endorsement process and the election. I think we do need fresh perspectives on the bench, and I hope I can be one of those for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. And I believe my Wonder Twin is going to come back on the screen. There she is.
Yeah. I think this has really been an excellent meeting tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for participating. We kept to a pretty tight timeline, and we managed to have everybody, I think, be heard and questions asked. I think this was an effective format. I also want to thank the crew behind the scenes. Janet Lundy did all the tech work, and we were practicing right up to the last second, and it all came together and it worked really well. So I hope that you'll all join next week, next Thursday on the 13th. We're going to do the remaining candidates. I believe there are 8, there may be 9 of them that will be speaking next week. This meeting was recorded, and so I would encourage you to let other people know about the recording. It's going to be posted on the 14th Ward Democratic Committee YouTube channel, and you'll be able to go there probably, I don't know how quickly Janet and Rebecca are going to get that up, but I think that probably it will be up within 24 hours. Rebecca also was behind the scenes with Janet, keeping everything smoothly. I was texting candidates to make sure they were in the queue. It all worked really well. And Leanne did a superb job of, in a very composed way, being able to follow the chat, ask the questions, and I think made this really a very useful and valuable meeting for everybody. So please share the recording. Please join us next Thursday. Thank you all very much. Yeah,
all right.
Leanne.
Have a good night, friends.
Thank you.